So when I say how to get your bees, or ordering your bees, there are a few different ways that you could actually get bees. One of them you'll see most common, which is at like your Tractor Supply or Southern States. They'll sell bees as a package. That's roughly 3 pounds of bees. Or 3 pounds of bees, which is about 10,000 bees in a box. The only thing that I'm not a big fan of is, and there are pros and cons. Mm-hmm. One of the cons that I'm mainly, one of the reasons why I don't order packages is because the queen that's inside that package of bees is not necessarily, she hasn't been accepted fully by that box of bees. So there's no drawn out comb, there's no frames, there's no pollen, nectar, nothing. It's just a box of bees and the queen is kept separate. That is the inexpensive way on actually getting bees, because starting out price, it's around $145 for a package, okay, depending on who's selling them, but they'll come in the mail and you'll go pick them up and then you'll install them. And you hope that the queen is going to be accepted. And if not, then you need to scramble and try to get a new queen, because there's nothing in there for them to make a new queen. Okay. I'm one of the other reasons why I'm not a fan of the package of bees is mainly because they're made in a climate that's not naturally where they're from. So I feel like it's a great way if you have to start this way, but if you can get a nuke, which we'll definitely talk about, mm-hmm, that is ideal. The other benefit to a package of bees is, depending on whatever hive style you get, they can go into it because there's no frames. You essentially just dump them in and they'll start building out their comb. Okay. And then also with the package of bees, you do need to release that queen after a couple of days because she's in a separate cage. And if you forget, then
that could be disastrous.
Yeah, it could be. Although I have heard where they will sometimes keep a spare queen inside that just in case, but I'm not 100% sure if that's
they always do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, my favorite, most ideal way of getting bees is what you guys ended up with, which is a nuke. A nuke is a short term for nucleus. And essentially a nucleus is a box, typically 5 frames, which is what you'll have of bees, and that has everything in it that they need to survive. The queen is already laying. She has, there's pollen, there's nectar, there's honey, there's drawn out comb. The workers are already established. So I feel like that's the best way because they're already a step mm-hmm. ahead. Mm-hmm. The cost is a little bit more. I think I've seen the lowest around $165. But I've also seen it all the way up to about $220 per box of bees. Mm-hmm. Definitely a lot more pros this way mm-hmm. versus cons. But I do think that it's important for you to understand what style hive to get before you order a nuke of bees, because that will determine whether or not you're going to get medium frames, deep frames, and we'll definitely...
Because in that box that we have out there mm-hmm. is these frames Correct. Already, and we'll just take those out and put them in the box.
Yes.
And
they're ready to go. But if we had a different style hive...
Like if it was the box.
Yes. If you had a different, like if you had a top bar hive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Langstroth frames won't fit into a top bar because of the design structure. So when you're starting to learn about, your hive style and the bees, make sure that you're just aware of it, especially if you order it from a beekeeper locally or, have to travel and pick it up, hopefully not too far. But it's very important to learn about pick a hive style that you want and then have the bees kind of match it. Okay. One of my favorite ways on getting bees is by setting up traps and catching them. I am huge on catching swarms, whether I'm going out and I'm collecting them or setting up a trap. You could set up a trap in your area And I actually think that it might be a good idea for you guys because you never know. I did see beekeepers down the road.
Yeah.
So if one of them swarms, you might actually catch their bees.
Okay.
So
Do you want it? Where do you put us? Like, where would you put this on your property?
So I would hang it in a tree. There's some.
Like, we wouldn't want to put it too close to where our bees
Actually,
are.
I would.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'd put it not too far because what if your bees do swarm?
They would go to that.
You're going to catch your bees again.
Okay.
So, but for getting
Those that don't know, when you say bees swarm, that means everybody left.
not everybody.
A swarm.
Not
I
everybody.
should say that again in case you couldn't hear that. So when you say swarm, that means, because people don't know what that means.
Yeah. Okay. So
That
swarming,
means, I would say that means everybody left.
not necessarily. So there's two different types. There's swarming or absconding. Swarming is a term that basically is just their natural way of reproducing. So inside a colony, there's typically one queen, and the worker bees are the ones in charge, and they're the ones to determine whether or not they've outgrown their home. If they have outgrown their home, then they're going to create a new queen and a few more. Actually, you'll see multiple queens. And what will end up happening is once the new queens start emerging, the old queen, along with a handful of the new queens, will actually leave and they'll find a new home. But a good portion of the colony will actually stay back with some of the new queens.
Oh, okay.
So swarming is not necessarily a bad thing. It's their way of showing that, hey, they're healthy, they're building. So for me, swarm traps are a great way to grow my bees by letting them do what they need to do naturally.
Okay.
But if you don't have bees and you know somebody that's in your area, you could easily set up a trap. And you could use lemongrass to kind of bait them. You can get some old comb and rub it on the frame.
Okay.
And
Isn't
that
stealing
smell.
the neighbor's bees?
How do you know it's their bees? Could be wild hives.
Well, I mean, it's
live.
they're gonna do it anyways.
You just give
The
them
bees
home.
are gonna do it anyways.
And there's
They might
natural
as
bees
well.
all in
I'm gonna
these.
set up a dog trap.
Stop it.
There are natural bees in the hive or in the trees that are around you too. So, catching them, it's not a guarantee, but it's $65 roughly in material. If you want to build a trap, set it up and just see what happens. Whether, it's an opportunity to see, but it is no guarantee.
So what happens if you catch a swarm and you don't like those bees because they're not nice? What do you do with them?
You would probably requeen them, which
Okay.
means that you would dispatch the queen and then introduce.
It sounds like very dangerous and stingy.
It's not too bad. I've had to
We're gonna
do
stick with
it.
the nucleus for right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I think maybe
In the
next year we'll
beginning.
do a trap and see what
I
happens.
would absolutely do it just to see what happens.
I don't think I'm ready for the trap yet.
Then my favorite way, spring, is catching an actual swarm, as in a cluster of bees that are in transit. That is my favorite way. And I go all over the place, to get them.
So, like, are they like flying together, like
And they're in a
pretty tight?
It's
Wow,
the cool.
that's gotta be crazy looking.
It is. It's like a tornado of bees. So when you're in a swarm, it is the whole tone of the apiary changes, and you can hear the bees, and it's like they instinctively know, obviously, but when they're flying around you, you would think that it's chaotic, but it's not. It's so calming, and you can just hear them. And there's a couple of tricks that I've done. I've taken two metal hammers and beat them together and created this mimicked thunder, because it actually calls them down, because they don't want to be flying in the middle of a storm.
Oh.
So if they're swarming, I can try to get them to settle, and then I will go and I'll gather them up and I'll give them a home fully furnished.
When you say gather, like with your hands, you
I have done
gather
it with my
them?
hands.
Or what else would you gather them with?
A box.
Oh, okay.
But I have gathered them with my
What about the
hands.
vacuums, the bee vacuums?
I have a bee vacuum. I've used it before.
But the bee vacuum doesn't hurt them.
No, not if
Because
you.
I feel like a regular vacuum might.
yeah,
hurt
regular
them.
vacuum, you're gonna have.
Or wings ripped off.
Yeah, it'll be horrible.
Okay.
But a bee vac you could do. You can make one with a 5-gallon bucket and
Okay.
modify it. It's pretty easy and inexpensive to
I've
make.
watched a lot of HGTV.
And that's
Yeah.
just going out and finding wild.
Yeah. going out.
Is that like when the people are renovating the house and there's bees in the wall and they call somebody to come and like get them? This is different.
No, that's a different way.
Oh my goodness. There's so many different ways.
How do you find them?
With the swarms, how do you find those?
So I get called. People
because somebody's like,
this
is scary.
They've called me. That's mainly how I get my bees. I think the most I've had is about 30 calls a season.
That's
and sometimes
a lot.
it's like multiple times a day.
So what do you do with the bees?
I give them homes or I give them to people.
Okay,
if I
so
can't.
like you would put them in your...
Yeah, I'll bring them into the apiary.
Or you would find a home for them.
Yes.
Okay.
So I try to do my part because you don't want them landing in somebody's wall and trying to make a home or people freaking out and spraying them. And and then it's because they're not, a swarm is the most docile.
It feels scary though, especially when people don't know what it is.
It's not very scary if if they don't know what it is.
If you don't know what it is and you're city folk.
Right.
It's like, what is this?
But I think more people are starting to become educated with what a swarm is. And most of the times if you see one that lands, if you don't do anything, they're going to leave. There's a scout bee that will actually go, there's multiple, and they'll go and scout an area and try to find a new, this might be my new home. So they'll go find a place and then they'll come back and they'll tell everybody and then they'll all just kind of take off and go. But when you get an opportunity to be in a swarm, I think you're going to it's very mesmerizing. It's very magical is what I've
never had the opportunity, but maybe, I'm still young.
Yeah. Now, I will say getting when I get swarm calls, I do try to have them send me a picture because most of the time people will think it's a yellow jacket nest and they're like, there's a swarm of bees. I'm like, that's yellow stripy things. Yes, but not the right yellow stripy
I'm not coming for those.
I'm not going to come
have to call somebody else.